Alright, so in this video discussion number 2, we're looking at media messages and socialization in TV and movies. And the first part of this discussion post is asking us to kind of keep a log of different messages we see in popular culture. And I'm going to highlight two things. First is Stranger Things. I've been recently watching the second season on Netflix, and some key aspects of this that I'm finding are that there's some strong female characters, and those characters are very independent. Some of them are Eleven, Joyce, and Nancy, and this whole idea of a strong, independent female character is something that I think is good, because if you've been trick-or-treating at all lately, you're going to see a ton of Eleven costumes, young girls wearing costumes with their Eggo boxes and stuff like that. But it's just it's a positive model for young girls to see and look up to be strong and independent. Another aspect of that show is the lead character, Hopper. He is a cop who is somewhat overweight. He's a little stubborn, and there's a scene where he's eating a donut, and then his assistant comes over and smacks the donut out of his mouth. And this just kind of goes along with a stereotype that cops are somewhat overweight, they're lazy, but there's a stereotype I found there. And then within The Walking Dead is the second aspect, or the second place where I found this is the strong male leader in Rick Grimes, who is the front leader in that show. And I took a class last semester called Leadership Communication, and we learned about this principle called the Superman leadership theory. And it basically is this stereotype that when we think of leaders, we think of these middle-aged white men, and that is what Rick Grimes is. He's this middle-aged white man, and that's not necessarily a positive or negative thing. It's just something that I noticed. And so the second aspect of this video post asks us to evaluate whether these are negative or aspects, and were we surprised by what we saw. And in the case of Stranger Things, I felt like that show is creating positive models for young girls to be strong, courageous, and independent. I think those are positive aspects of media. And it was slightly surprising because although this series is based in the 80s, that was typically a time where there was a little bit of inequality with gender roles. And so to see that the independence from female characters, I think that's a strong thing. It's a good thing that people can look up to nowadays. I do think that the cop stereotype is a negative aspect, even though, yes, it was based in the 80s. There's a framework there that cops are overweight and lazy, so that may be a negative thing there. And that didn't really surprise me, as there's these stereotypes against police officers that tend to be lazy and overweight. But yeah, and then the last part is the Walking Dead case. I don't necessarily believe that Rick Grimes as being the leader is a negative thing or a positive thing, but something that I have seen is that the show has developed very strong female leaders in Michonne, and there's some other ones. But by creating and developing those characters, it offsets the argument for the inequality in leadership.